So we just got back from camping yesterday, and in hindsight, looking back, every time that there's a big trip that we go to or I go to, I always try and find some of the lessons in that trip or that experience. And thinking on the past few days in Shenandoah National Park, camping, it being Stella's first camping trip at 2 years old, and mine and JD's first time since Stella has been born. A couple things come to mind. JD and I are a little rusty in camping. We used to go a lot, especially when we were first dating up in the Rocky Mountains. And in a sense of the way, it is like riding a bike, but there are some things that we forgot about. Like we forgot the main ingredient for our chicken stew, which was chicken, on the first night. And JD mentioned that he had a challenging time keeping the fire going, which I guess in the past, I've never noticed it. I thought he did a great job, but he said in the past it was easier to him. So I guess it just means that we need to go more. But on top of that, it was a real big lesson and reminder in adjusting expectations. So naturally, it's not going to be the same pre-parenthood compared to having a child, especially a toddler, a very strong-willed toddler. So having a toddler, we changed our camp game site a little bit and decided to stay at a campsite versus going in more isolation because we felt that it was safer. However, there came kind of a few consequences to that. I wouldn't say they were positive or negative, but just different than what we're used to, different and a different experience in camping. So Stella can be very strong-willed, and when she doesn't get her way, she screams. And I'm always very cognizant of the people around her because it is a very loud, shrill scream that you can feel your eardrums reverberating. So I was a little nervous about her and that, and also during nap time and trying to go to sleep. It's a different routine for her. So that was interesting. It was definitely, like I mentioned, an adjustment in our expectations. However, I'm also grateful because our campsite neighbors were very gracious, all of them. In fact, one of them was a guy from Boston who rode on a Harley traveling to Paris, Texas. And in his very Boston accent, his name was Tony, he said, "Hey, don't worry about me. I live in the city. I hear a lot of noises going to sleep. So a kid isn't one of them," which was really cool. And then we had a family next to us who had a few older children, and they were very hospitable. So everything works out. One thing that was really neat, though, was on Saturday around 2 or 2:30 was a huge rainstorm, and we had to hunker down in our tent, and our tent started to leak a little bit, and it was coming down. It was a severe thunderstorm, and it has been a while since I have been camping during a severe thunderstorm. And I honestly don't know if there's ever been a time where JD and I have camped together during that sort of weather. It's been, as far as I remember, it's been pretty beautiful weather. So anyway, short story long, the thunderstorm went on for about 45 minutes to an hour. No joke. It was really long. And it started to get pretty scary because we were starting to get a really large puddle in the bottom of our tent. Had we not had the pack and play that's 5 inches above the ground to put all of our stuff in, our stuff would have been soaked. Luckily, we had an air mattress that was plastic, so that kept us, it was kind of like our boat in the tent, and our sleeping bags were waterproof. But after about 30 minutes of this severe thunder and rain and wind, it started to get really scary. I found myself, really noticed that my brain and my mind were starting to kind of get to that fight or flight response of, oh my gosh, what if this continues all night? What are we going to do? It's starting to get really cold. One of our stakes, it seemed like, fell out, so our tent was flapping in the air a lot. And it's really interesting how it was like, okay, well, let's just kind of take it a minute at a time and see. There's no need to get upset right now. And then it was just neat after, an hour of this heavy torrential downpour, you started to notice it was slowing down a little bit more. And then eventually it just all kind of went away and it was quiet. And it was very peaceful. And then everyone kind of emerged out of their tents and we started talking about it a little bit. And there was this big sense of peacefulness and relief. And then okay, what sort of mess did this create? And it was all kind of like humorous in the middle of it too. And isn't that such a great analogy for fear? Because I find myself faced with a lot of fear lately. And isn't that perfect, the storm? And how sometimes we don't even see it coming and it just comes. And then for a minute there, and for a minute with the rain, JD and I put our ponchos on and we were dancing in the rain while Stella was in the tent sleeping. But then it got really crazy and we're like, oh my man, this is too much. This is too much. So we're gonna go now and hunker down. And it's so true. It's like, okay, I got this. I can handle this. It's no big deal. And then you find a safe place and you kind of hunker down in the fear and the storm. And then you're like, oh my God, how long is this gonna last? And that's kind of the phase I'm in right now, is how much more of this can I take, and how much more of this is gonna be thrown at me? How much chaos is there going to be before it settles down? And I honestly don't know. I don't have the answer, except for just take it a minute at a time and a moment at a time. And it's so interesting how nature was teaching me that. Just take it a moment, a minute at a time, and see what happens. And eventually have faith that it's temporary and that it's going to stop, and that beauty and that peace and that reprieve will be at the end. So I just thought it was a really beautiful analogy. I wanted to share it with y'all. I hope it helps. It's helping me on my journey.